Hey guys, I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome to another video on the channel where today we are back with a Zombies Q&A, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do with the zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, you know what to do by now. Drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the videos, but let's get into it. Here we go and enjoy. So the first question of today from JMatter45 says, "Hey BOA, how come we see Eddie grown up but we don't see Samantha?" So technically yes, we do see Eddie grown up. We know Eddie is the child version of Richtofen. We actually see Richtofen grown up in different stages. We see him as a child, that is Eddie. We then see his PRIMIS version, although we don't know exactly how old he is. I don't know, I'd say he's in his 30s maybe. And then we see Ultimus Richtofen, where again, we don't know their exact age, but I would say he's in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. So we see Richtofen at 3 different stages of his life. It's the same for Takeo, Dempsey and Nikolai. We see them at 2 different stages, they're PRIMIS and Ultimus. But the reason we are seeing this is due to us witnessing 2 different timelines. We have the original and we also have Dimension 64. That's why we see 2 different versions of our characters, because we first meet PRIMIS in 1918, hence why they are younger, and when we first met Ultimus, that was in 1945, which is why they are older. And so you may be saying, well, if there's 2 different timelines, why don't we see 2 different versions of Samantha? And the reason for that is, she only existed in one of them. In Dimension 64, the Origins timeline, Samantha was never actually born. The only reason we saw her was because she travelled from the original timeline to the new one. During 1918, Samantha was never actually born, so that's why we don't see a younger version of her, because she didn't actually exist. And of course, as we go through our zombies maps, since we are time travelling, we never actually see the characters get to age. They don't go through the years as we do, they actually go forward or back in time from universe to universe. And of course, doing that, they wouldn't actually age. So if we jump from 1945 to 1965, it would have only been a couple of minutes that would have passed instead of 20 years. The next question from Alex the Gamer says, "Hey BOA, why does Richtofen laugh in BO2 when you throw a monkey bomb outside of the map or in the lava?" So this isn't just on BO2, it is on every COD Zombies game. If you throw a monkey bomb into, as you say, something like the lava or outside of the map, basically you throw it out of bounds, somewhere where it's not going to work, you will hear the announcer of the map laugh. So as you say in BO2 it was Richtofen, in BO3 as I will show you right now, you could just hear there, it was Samantha. Surprisingly, I've had a lot of people over the years send me messages saying, BOA, check out this Easter egg when you throw the monkey bomb outside of the map or in certain areas, because on some maps there are kind of like glitched areas. As you saw in that gameplay, the monkey bomb was thrown into the wall and Samantha started laughing. So it went out of bounds, but clearly it was glitched because it was still kind of inside of the map. But yeah, if you ever do this and hear Samantha laugh or whoever it isn't an Easter egg. It's just the monkey being thrown out of bounds. The next question says, how did PRIMIS die during the Great War? So if we listen to radios in Tag der Toten, we are told, which we didn't know before, that PRIMIS did in fact die during the time of the Great War. However, if we go over to the Chronorium, nothing like this was ever mentioned. This was only revealed to us in Tag der Toten. All the Chronorium tells us is on December 31st, 1299, together with the Keepers, PRIMIS defeats the Apothicons, bringing the Great War to an end. And then a day later on January 1st, 1300, we are told that PRIMIS just disappear from history. Yet the radios that we hear from Pablo Marinus in Tag der Toten don't really seem to align with this.
Day 3682, I think. Last night, I had a dream. A dream I have not had in many years. Like the ones I used to have at der Eisendrache. I dreamed I was in medieval times, during a great war, a war to end all wars. In this dream, I am attacked by one of the great beasts. It holds me within its grasp, about to end my life, when I am saved, spared by a man in cloth, not a priest, someone more powerful. He wields a staff of fire. I see 4 heroes stand atop of a mound. The 4 raise their staffs in unison. And suddenly, the knights know the war is not lost. I rejoin the fight, and fight alongside my king. For years, I had dreamed of this war.
So in the first radio from Pablo, we can hear him talking about the Great War. He mentions himself going back where he is attacked by one of the great beasts. It holds him within its grasp, where it's about to end his life, and that's when he's spared and saved by a man in cloth. Not a priest, but someone more powerful who was wielding the Staff of Fire. We know this character was Richtofen, and then he says the four heroes stand atop of the mound before raising their staffs in the air, and that's when suddenly the knights fighting during this great war know that it is not lost. So that tells us that this scene that we saw at the end of Revelations, of PRIMIS standing on the mound, raising their staffs, this wasn't in fact at the end of the Great War, this was part way through it. PRIMIS did this to assure the knights that were fighting that the war wasn't lost, which is another thing that's interesting because we know that PRIMIS won the Great War, that's what the Canorium tells us, yet here Pablo's almost talking like they lost it. And then in the next radio, he says this.
In my dreams of this great war, I meet a German doctor. Oddly, he reminds me of the man who once tormented me, but his face is different. When I meet him, he is angry and frustrated. He mentions a man named Dr. Monty, saying he is to blame. This German doctor, he says he believed following Monty's plan would lead them to secure a better tomorrow. This was a lie, he says. This Dr. Monty, he sent the four to the Great War. It was at this moment the German doctor said he realized the truth. Coming to the Great War did not break the cycle. It was merely the end of their loop. We will die here, he says. Then we will be reborn again. And when it is time, we will meet once more in northern France, continuing this never-ending loop. I wonder, he says, how many times have I been to the Great War? How many times have I perpetuated this endless cycle? I'm tired, he says. I have been trying so very hard to do the right thing. But for all his efforts, he had only fulfilled the prophecy of this cycle. He and Dr. Monty had forged the endless loop.
He tells us one time when he arrived at the Great War, he came face to face with Richtofen. However, this time when he did, and remember that this was a part of the broken cycle, but Richtofen had found out that Dr. Monty's plan was a lie. That coming back to the Great War wouldn't break their cycle, it was merely the end of their loop. PRIMIS would go on to die at the Great War and then reborn again hundreds of years later in Origins. So we are told by Richtofen that as part of the cycle, every time they would get sent back to the Great War, at some point they would die and then be reborn again hundreds of years later. Like I said earlier, that doesn't line up with what the Canorium says, because the Canorium tells us they win the Great War and then disappear from history. And even more so, on the final radio from Pablo, he tells us this.
Day 4721. I think I understand. I know why I am here, why I'm trapped on this rock, why I have these dreams, these visions, why I must get to this great war, and what purpose I am to serve in this cataclysmic event of the ages. I am not being sent just to witness what happened, but it is I who helps the doctor break his cycle. Near the end of the Great War, when all hope is nearly lost, I protect him while he activates a device, a teleportation mechanism. I hold back the undead as he powers it up and give him the moment he needs to escape his fate. I ask him, where will you go? He says, there is a prison I must travel to. Hopefully, I can intercept our friends before it is too late. Before he goes, I give him the elemental gem from the Staff of Fire. I had seen it used to vanquish great evil. He once used it to save my life. Perhaps it would serve him well on his new path. This is why I am here.
He says, I think I understand. I know why I am here, why I am trapped on this rock. The rock, of course, being the lighthouse in Tagdertoten. We know he is the hermit that was living up there. But he said, I know why I've been having these dreams, these visions, why I must get to this great war, and what purpose I am to serve there. I am not just being sent there to witness what happened, but it is I who helps Richtofen break his cycle. Near to the end of the Great War, when all hope is lost, I protect him while he activates a device, a teleportation mechanism. I then hold back the undead as he powers it up, giving him the moment he needs to escape his fate. But just before he leaves, I ask him where you will go, and he tells me to the prison, to Alcatraz. And just before Richtofen leaves, Pablo gives him the elemental gem from the fire staff. But it seems from these radios that PRIMIS don't win the Great War. In fact, they die here. Another interesting thing is, we're told that there are zombies here. Again, in the Canorium, nothing was ever mentioned. From what I believed, it was just the Apothicons fighting the Keepers, of course along with the Great Knights and PRIMIS, and a few other characters, but there were no zombies involved. And if you go to the Alpha Omega trailer, we were actually shown the Great War there, and in any of those clips, we can't see zombies, it's just the Apothicons and the Keepers. But all of a sudden, in the radios for Tagdertoten, Pablo is telling us that he holds back the undead whilst Richtofen powers up the teleportation mechanism so he can use it to escape. But getting back to your main question, because that wasn't the actual topic, what you are saying is, well, how did PRIMIS die during the Great War? First off, I'm saying, well, initially we never knew they died. We were told that they won the Great War and disappeared from history. Okay, they could have potentially died sometime after. What of? I don't know, maybe a different war, maybe of old age and infection. They could have died and then have been reborn again hundreds of years later in Origins, but from the radios and tag, it almost makes it seem like they lost the Great War and they would have died here, because Pablo is mentioning that all hope was nearly lost and he had to protect Richtofen from the undead. That was the only way that he could escape. It still doesn't specifically tell us how PRIMIS died. If they lost the Great War, then they could have been killed by the Apothicons, in the same way they could have been killed by the zombies. Since this radio is a part of the broken cycle, and it mentions Richtofen escaping, it doesn't go on to say what would have happened if Richtofen didn't escape. For all we know, they could have turned it around. Perhaps that's the moment when they went onto the mound, reassured everyone, and then they went on to win. Maybe, but when exactly they died, it's something that wasn't revealed to us. Were they killed by the Apothicons, the zombies, or something else? I guess it's something we won't ever know. And so guys, there we go. That is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. And I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.